Talk a little bit more about this. NBC News chief political analyst Chuck Todd, Mariana Sotomayor, congressional reporter for The Washington Post, Mo Elleithee, Democratic strategist and executive director of the Georgetown University Institute of Public Politics and Public Service, and Mark Lotter, former director of strategic communications for the 2020 Trump campaign and chief communications officer at the America First Policy Institute. Thank you all. So, Chuck, I'll start with you. We look at these numbers, the data that's been aggregated by the folks at the Cook Political Report. It's saying loud and clear that Biden winning a second term is not going to be an easy thing. Is any of that reality getting through to the campaign, to Democrats on the Hill and other places?
Well, it's definitely in Democrats on the Hill, because think about who you hear from and who you don't, right? Who has put out supportive messages for Biden? It's people that either are not in swing districts or in swing states or are not on the ballot in 2024. I'm referring to a John Fetterman. The people raising the most concern are the ones that are on the ballot. You take a Mikey Sherrill, she's in a swing district in New Jersey. It's a tough district in a good Democratic year, let alone whatever this could look like. So those are the fact that that's who you're hearing from. And guess what? They're not just saying it. They're not just talking to voters. They also have their own polling operations. And they've been seeing this problem. None of this was new. I mean, one of the things that the Biden campaign is sort of trying to take some solace in is that, oh, the numbers aren't moving that much. Mm-hmm. Well, that's because the voters had already decided that he might not be up to the job, which sort of was priced in. Unfortunately, him having the debate performance he had failed to do what the Biden campaign was trying to do, which was unlock this sort of stuckness that this race has been in. And that's why there's widespread panic on anybody that's in a competitive election in the Democratic side.
And Mariana, you spend your time on Capitol Hill talking to these lawmakers. Is that what you're hearing too? They're worried about these down ballot races?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to Chuck's point, they have their own internal polls. And based on some of the conversations I've had, and it's not just the competitive district members anymore. There are some members in safer seats in California who are starting to see, based on their internal polls, that not only is Biden going down, but they're starting to go down. And that is why you have seen an array of members, privately still talking to leadership and saying, we're raising the alarms here. And it's really key, both in what Pelosi has said, and I would even say yesterday, the Democratic chairman, Pete Aguilar, made very clear that you have to kind of give Biden this week. Pelosi said, let's wait till NATO is over. Many Democrats are going to be watching the press conference tomorrow that he's giving, because it's the first time that he is very much unprompted taking questions. If that doesn't go well, we are likely to hear many more members come out publicly to step aside. But there is this realistic perspective from House Democrats, more so than the Senate. They know that they can't totally influence the process, that Biden's going to have to make this decision on their own, but they're actually starting to pray that maybe some senators can go to the White House at some point and make this very clear to Biden.
So, Mo, if we talk about this news conference that's coming up tomorrow, how big a deal is this, do you think? And what does success actually look like for the president coming out of an event like that?
Yeah, I think every day is a big deal right now. And to both of your points, it's not that the polling is bad, I think, that is causing the problem. It's the inability to do anything to sort of counter the slippage that they're seeing in the polling. And that's what people are waiting for. Those who are remaining silent, or those who are just grousing in the background, they are waiting to see the president tackle the number one concern with him right now, which is the appearance of strength and decisiveness, right? That's it. It's that he's got to look strong and in command. So what does success look like tomorrow? The success looks like what we saw the day after the debate in North Carolina, what we saw at State of the Union, but without the prompter, right? And without the script. If he looks strong and in command of that podium when he is taking questions from the press corps, that will begin the rehabilitation process. The polls that we've seen are all mostly, the public polls at least, snap polls post-debate. What matters is not what the initial post-debate polls show, it's the trend line. That I usually don't care about any singular poll. But if the trend line continues to show slippage after another week, then you're going to, I think, see the drumbeat get louder and louder.
So, Mark, while that drum is either getting louder or staying where it is, we know that former President Trump has been relatively calm and controlled through this time period. He's been fairly quiet, if you will. What's the opportunity for him going into the RNC next week? What does he need to do to take advantage of this moment in time?
Well, I think you're seeing them set that up right now with the themes they've announced. So you're going to have the economy on night one. You're going to have the border and security crime on night two, national security night three, and then obviously the president, the former president, giving his acceptance speech on night four. So this is a chance to get back to the policies, because while we all talk about the debate, Joe Biden was losing this election prior to the debate. He was down in the national polls. He was down in all the battleground states. The debate didn't help, clearly. So getting back to the policy and the reason why 2/3 of the American people say the country's on the wrong track, that plays to Donald Trump's favor.
Chuck, let me go there with you. I want to put up on the screen part of the column that you wrote this week and talk a little bit about the former president. You said this isn't about Biden's feelings. This is about Trump. Hand-wringing about Biden isn't anti-Biden, it's anti-Trump. The sooner Biden understands how he got to the White House and why there are so many questions now about whether he should be the Democratic Party's standard bearer, the sooner the party can figure out how to move forward. Now, as long as Biden is the nominee, you're going to have this low hum about his fitness for office, sort of sitting next to Trump being his competitor. You write that none of this is actually helping Donald Trump, though.
Well, it's been interesting. He hasn't gotten a huge bump, right? It's been more of a sinking for Biden. But, I subscribe to an old Haley Barberism from the 90s. Good gets better, bad gets worse in politics. And it happens a lot. And you can sort of see this with Biden. It goes to what Mo was saying. It's not that the polls have moved a lot and, okay, this in theory is recoverable. What is the evidence he has the ability to do what it takes to sort of turn this around? And so, for instance, instead of complaining that people are upset at him, he ought to be more I get it. The only reason he got the nomination is because he was seen as the easiest and best path for Democrats to unite around somebody to beat Trump. He has benefited from this, where the elite said, look, Biden's never been he's never been the first choice of a lot of constituency groups. But what he was he was the least bad option. And he's benefited from that. Now he's got to realize that his one strength was his ability to beat Trump. When that's gone, you have no more strengths unless you can, he ought to bring Mark Warner to the White House and say, I get it. I'm sorry. I blew it. Give me one more chance. But instead he's attacking him, which I don't think is a very smart way to sort of get the party back into your good graces.
Mariana, I want to ask you about Donald Trump's rally last night. He talked quite a bit about the issues that the Democratic Party is dealing with right now, but also about Vice President Harris in some of his remarks here. Let me play a little bit of that now.
But whatever else can be said about crooked Joe Biden, you have to give him credit for one brilliant decision, probably the smartest decision he's ever made. He picked Kamala Harris as his vice president. If Joe had picked someone even halfway competent, they would have bounced him from office years ago, but they can't because she's got to be their second choice.
So what do you make of that, the comments we just heard about the vice president?
I mean, it's significant that he devoted any time to her, right? Because it is a switch. I mean, Republicans are very much aware that if Biden decides to step aside, Democrats are likely going to support Harris. Why? Because she's the only one who has that Biden-Harris campaign operation that could stay. But also, for many, even though they may not have liked her policies before, I'm even hearing in the 2 meetings that frontline swing district House Democrats have had with leadership, they have said, we will get behind Harris. I think that's why you heard from Mikey Sherrill yesterday when she was asked if she would get behind Harris. Unequivocally, she said,
that was quick, yeah.
Very quick, that she would be a fantastic candidate. So this is where lawmakers are pivoting.
I could make an argument, actually, that while she may not be able to, she may struggle with some swing voters, she helps fire up a base that actually can help Democrats down the ballot, even if she comes up short. So there's a lot of folks I've been talking to over the last week who said, look, if we're going to lose, give me somebody that might actually get the Democratic base out and get some enthusiasm out. And suddenly the thinking is, that's not Biden anymore.
Right, and she gets that age question off the ballot. That's what I hear consistently.
But she doesn't get the policy issues off the ballot. And so on immigration, the economy, energy, the border, she still owns all of Biden's position, and I don't think she'll change many.
Here's the thing, and this is one of these, Donald Trump's ability to stay disciplined when it comes to her, I question that. And the likelihood that he says something about her identity, that ends up blowing up is, I don't think, a small percentage.
He's not
disciplined on that.
He's not known for having the policy debate. The conversation usually goes in different directions, so there's a potential for an explosion.
Plus, she also has the ability to reframe the policy debate, and you saw that before the presidential debate. The campaign putting her out there as the face of the Democratic message on women's health issues and reproductive freedom, putting her out there, actually redefining. Republicans have kind of owned the word freedom for a long time now in our politics, going out there to help redefine it on terms that Democrats can play offense on. She's been doing that as vice president for the past year. And, I think she has an ability to actually go toe-to-toe with the Trump campaign on the policy issues that Democrats want to focus on, and that's going to be helpful.
And Mark, there is a need for swing voters to hear something that's coming out of the RNC too, right? Is that something that you expect the former president's going to be able to capitalize on, to talk to those people without going off message?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what they're going to be focused on: grocery and gas prices, securing the border, dealing with illegal immigration, making your homes, your communities, our country safer, putting an end to the wars that all have happened under Joe Biden and now Kamala Harris, because they will add that as well, too. So you're going to tag them with everything that people are upset about, and we'll provide and point to Donald Trump's record as being the answer.
Let's not overlook what Trump is doing right now. Suddenly he made room for Ron DeSantis. There's words he's trying to make room for Nikki Haley. I mean, look, this is a different Trump campaign. They're being that is smart politics. If they present a more united party next week at a time when Democrats are having this fight next week, I mean, it shows you Donald Trump's listening to somebody.
Yeah. All right, we will leave it there for now. Chuck, Mariana, Mo, Mark, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.